There is a training course that exists inside the United States military that breaks men who have already proven themselves unbreakable. It is not designed for beginners. It is not a starting point. It is not where soldiers go to learn how to be tough. It is where the already tough go to find out if they have anything left. Veterans who have survived combat deployments, who have lived through things that would end most people, walk into this course and walk out changed forever, if they walk out at all. Some quit, some are carried out. Some sit down in the middle of a field, in the middle of a mountain, in the middle of the night, and simply cannot go any further. And those men are not weak. They are not failures. They are some of the most decorated, most experienced warfighters this country has ever produced. And this course broke them anyway. That is what we are talking about today. If you have ever wondered how far the human body and mind can actually be pushed, stay with us until the end, because the answer is going to shock you. Before we go any further, hit that subscribe button right now. What you are about to hear is the kind of story that deserves to be on your feed every single week, and we do not want you to miss a single one. Let us start with something important. When most people think about brutal military training, they think about basic training. They picture drill sergeants screaming, people doing push-ups, someone getting smoked for showing up late. And look, basic training is genuinely hard. It is designed to be a shock to the system, but it is also designed to take civilians, people with no prior military experience whatsoever, and transform them into functional soldiers. The starting point is zero. The bar, as demanding as it feels to those going through it, is set to accommodate the wide range of people entering military service. What we are talking about today is something entirely different. This is not a course where the starting point is zero. The starting point is already elite. The people who show up to this training already know how to fight, already know how to move under fire, already know how to operate in environments that would be incomprehensible to a civilian. They have already been selected, already been tested, already been proven. And yet this course is still designed to find the ceiling of what they can do and then push them past it anyway. The course we are focusing on is the United States Army Ranger School. And before you say that you have heard of it, before you say you know what it is, give us a moment. Because most people who have heard the name have no idea what actually happens inside. They picture something hard. They picture something intense. But the reality of Ranger School, the actual daily reality of what students experience from the first morning to the last possible day, is something that goes well beyond what most people are capable of imagining. This is not hyperbole. This is not recruitment marketing. This is not a story being told to make soldiers look impressive. This is a documented, studied, medically observed training program that has been running continuously since 1950 and has left a trail of broken bodies, shattered egos, and permanently altered perspectives behind it for over 70 years. Ranger School is not a Special Forces selection course. Let us get that clear right at the beginning. Many people confuse it with Special Forces training, with selection pipelines like Delta Force selection or the Navy SEAL BUD/SAS program. Ranger School is different. It is the Army's premier small unit tactics leadership course. What it is designed to do, at its core, is take already trained soldiers and put them under the most extreme conditions possible, specifically to see how they perform as leaders when everything is going wrong. Sleep deprivation, near starvation caloric intake, relentless physical stress, constant tactical problems that must be solved and solved correctly, even when the brain is barely functioning. That is Ranger School, and the men who walk through its gates already know all of this before they arrive. They have read the accounts. They have heard the stories from people who survived it. Some of them have had friends who failed it. They walk in knowing exactly what is coming, and it still destroys them anyway. The average Ranger School class begins with somewhere between 200 and 350 students. Those students have already passed the Ranger assessment phase, which is itself a series of physical and tactical tests that eliminate a significant percentage of people before the real course even begins. So the class that steps off the bus on day one is not a random collection of soldiers. They are already selected. They are already above average in nearly every measurable way. Physical fitness scores that would be the top of the scale in any other unit, combat experience in many cases, small unit leadership backgrounds, officer candidates who graduated near the top of their academy classes, special operations candidates proving themselves before pipeline continuation. These are not average people in any meaningful sense. And still, the graduation rate hovers persistently around 49%. Let that number sit for a moment. Fewer than half of an already elite group finishes. The ones who do not finish are not the soft ones. There are no soft ones at the starting line. Day 1 of Ranger School begins before dawn. Before the sun is up, before the sky has any light in it, students are already moving. The first physical fitness test happens immediately. It is not a warm-up, it is a reckoning. The Ranger Physical Assessment includes a series of push-ups, sit-ups, a 5-mile run that must be completed within 40 minutes, and pull-ups. These numbers sound manageable until you understand that they happen back-to-back with minimal rest, and they happen at the very beginning of a course that will drain every calorie, every hour of sleep, and every psychological reserve a person possesses. Fail any portion and you are gone before the first full day ends. Some candidates, who have trained for months specifically for this assessment, fail right there on the first morning, not because they are unprepared, because the nerves, the anticipation, the sheer weight of the moment catches up to them in a way that no amount of training can fully prevent. After the physical assessment comes the combat water survival test. Students must demonstrate the ability to perform specific water-based tasks while wearing their full combat equipment. This includes jumping from a platform into deep water and remaining afloat, navigating through water obstacles in full kit, and performing tasks that require staying calm when submerged and disoriented. Soldiers who are not water qualified, who freeze at the edge of that platform, who cannot complete the tasks, are dropped. The school does not wait. The school does not offer second chances. The school moves forward, and anyone who cannot keep up is simply no longer part of the equation. Then comes the land navigation test. Students are given a map and a compass, and are sent into the terrain to find a series of points. This sounds like something that ought to be straightforward for trained soldiers. And in normal conditions, with rest and proper nutrition and a clear head, it is. But land navigation at Ranger School happens after the physical assessment, after the water survival test, with pack weight on their backs, with time pressure, and in terrain that does not care about their comfort level. Students who cannot locate the required number of points in the allotted time are dropped. Just like that. And this is still day 1. The course itself is divided into 3 phases, and each phase is designed around a specific type of terrain and a specific type of operational problem. The first phase is called the Darby phase, named after Ranger founder Colonel William O. Darby. It takes place at Fort Benning in Georgia. The second phase is the Mountain phase, conducted at Camp Frank D. Merrill in Dahlonega, Georgia, up in the Appalachian Mountains. The third is the Florida phase, conducted at Eglin Air Force Base and surrounding areas including the swamps, the Gulf waters, and the dense jungle-like terrain of the Florida Panhandle. Each phase builds on the last. Each phase destroys the students in a slightly different way, and the students who make it through all 3 are not the same people who started. Let us go deep into the Darby phase first, because this is where the foundation of everything breaks down. The Darby phase is roughly 20 days long, and within those 20 days, the Army systematically strips away every comfort and every crutch that soldiers rely on in normal life. Sleep happens in fragments, not full nights, not even close. Students get an average of 3 to 4 hours of sleep per 24-hour period, and those hours are not consecutive. They come in snatches between patrol movements, between after-action reviews, between planning sessions, between the next mission that starts before the last one is fully processed. The brain does not function on 3 hours of fragmented sleep. Everybody knows this. Everybody knows it going in, and it still does not prepare them for what it actually feels like when it happens, day after day with no end in sight. The caloric situation is equally devastating. Students in Ranger School are consuming roughly 2,000 calories per day on average, while burning anywhere from 4,000 to 6,000 calories per day depending on the operational tempo. The math is not complicated. They are running a severe caloric deficit every single day. The body does not waste time before it begins responding. Within the first week, students are losing weight measurably. Muscle mass begins to disappear. The body starts cannibalizing itself, burning stored fat, and then beginning to break down muscle tissue for energy. Students who arrived as physically imposing soldiers, men who could do 20 pull-ups with extra weight attached, begin to look gaunt. Faces thin out, eyes go hollow. The physical transformation is visible enough that instructors, called Ranger instructors or RIs, are trained to watch for signs that a student has crossed from push to the limit into genuinely medically dangerous territory. And yet, despite all of this, despite the sleep deprivation and the caloric deficit and the relentless physical demands, what Ranger School is actually testing is leadership. Every single day, students are assigned leadership positions. One day, you are the patrol leader. Another day, you are the assistant patrol leader. Another day, you are in a supporting role. But when you are the leader, the full weight of the patrol's performance lands on your shoulders. The ranger instructor evaluating you does not care that you have not slept properly in 6 days. He does not care that your legs are cramping and your feet are blistered and your hands are shaking. He cares about one thing. Can you lead men through a complex tactical mission when everything inside you is screaming to stop? Can you plan, brief, execute, and account for your people when your brain is operating at a fraction of its normal capacity? Can you make decisions, good decisions, correct decisions, when every cognitive resource you possess has been systematically reduced to almost nothing? That is the test. That has always been the test. Because in actual combat, the conditions do not get better before the hard decisions have to be made. In actual combat, leaders do not get rest and a good meal before the situation requires them to perform. Ranger School manufactures the conditions of sustained operational stress in an environment where no one is actually shooting at you, and it measures whether or not you can lead through it. The instructors are not sadists, they are evaluators, and they are measuring something real. The grading system at Ranger School is unique, and for many students, maddening. When you are serving in a leadership position, the RI assigned to your patrol grades your performance. You need a GO, a passing grade, in a certain number of your leadership positions to be eligible for graduation. If you receive a no-go, a failing grade, in any leadership position, you are not immediately dropped. But you will need to succeed in subsequent leadership opportunities to make up for it. What this creates is a situation where students are not just surviving day to day, they are strategically aware of where they stand in the grading cycle at all times, even through the fog of exhaustion and hunger. They have to be, because a string of NOGOs leads directly to a peer evaluation and a potential drop from the course. And the peer evaluation adds another dimension entirely. Students rate each other. They rank the members of their patrol from top to bottom, fall in the bottom of those peer rankings consistently, and the school uses that information in deciding who continues and who does not. This means that leadership is not just about the formal positions. It is about how you treat the people around you every hour of every day, how you pull your weight, how you support the soldier next to you even when you have nothing left to give. Some students come to Ranger School and they can handle the physical demands, but they cannot handle watching a teammate struggle without helping. And some students can handle the physical demands and they know how to work with their team, but they collapse under the cognitive weight of planning and executing complex missions on 3 hours of sleep. And some students handle all of it, and they fail a peer evaluation because somewhere in the middle of the worst night of their lives, they made a comment or made a choice that revealed something their teammates could not respect. Ranger School finds all of it. Whatever the weakness is, it finds it. Now let us talk about what happens when you arrive at the mountain phase. By the time students make it to Dahlonega and begin the mountain phase, they are already diminished. They have been through the Darby phase. They have lost weight. They have lost sleep. They have failed and recovered, or failed and been recycled back to start a phase over, or they have scraped through with enough go grades to keep moving. The soldiers who arrive at the mountain phase are not in peak physical condition. They are in the condition that weeks of sustained deprivation produce, and the Army takes those diminished soldiers and puts them on mountains. The mountain phase introduces rope work, mountaineering skills, and operations in terrain that is dramatically more demanding than the flat Georgia ground of Fort Benning. Students learn knots, anchor systems, rappelling techniques, and how to move a patrol through mountain terrain efficiently. These skills are taught in a condensed, relentless format where there is no time to fully absorb one lesson before the next one begins. Students who have never done significant mountain work in their lives are suddenly responsible for the safety of their patrol on exposed ridgelines and technical terrain. The margin for error is lower. The consequences of mistakes are more immediate. Fall on flat ground and you get up. Fall in the mountains and the situation changes in ways that cannot be undone. The patrols in the mountain phase are longer and more physically taxing than anything in the Darby phase. Students are moving through mountains with full combat loads, packs that can weigh over 70 pounds depending on the mission equipment, for extended periods. 12-hour patrols become 16-hour patrols. 16-hour patrols push against 20 hours of continuous movement and operation. Sleep windows shrink even further. There are documented accounts from Ranger graduates of going 48 to 72 hours with essentially no sleep during the most intense periods of the mountain phase, surviving on the kind of neurological fumes that should not, in any rational assessment, allow a person to function. And yet they keep moving, keep planning, keep leading, because there is no other option, and because stopping is something they have chosen not to do. The cold in Dahlonega adds another layer. Depending on the time of year a class runs its mountain phase, temperatures can drop to genuinely dangerous levels. Students have experienced hypothermia during ranger school. It is not a theoretical risk. Feet that are wet for days on end develop trench foot, a condition where the tissue of the feet begins to break down from sustained moisture and cold. Hands that are cold and wet lose dexterity, which makes weapons handling, rope work, and equipment operation harder in precisely the moments when those tasks matter most. The school provides equipment. The school has medical support standing by. But the school does not make the cold go away. The cold is part of the test. How you perform when your hands do not work properly and your feet hurt with every step, and your eyes want to close in the middle of a briefing, that is exactly what the school wants to know about you. One of the most demanding moments in the mountain phase is a multi-day patrol exercise that takes students through some of the most technical terrain the course uses. Students who have been running on the absolute minimum for over 2 weeks are suddenly required to plan and execute platoon-level ambushes and raids in mountain terrain, at night, with all the physical and cognitive penalties they have been accumulating applied in full. Patrol leaders during this exercise are responsible for terrain analysis, route planning, enemy situation assessments, coordination of supporting elements, execution of the mission, consolidation and reorganization after the objective, and then the movement back to a patrol base before the whole cycle begins again. A patrol leader who freezes up, who fails to maintain situational awareness, who cannot communicate clearly to his element leaders, who makes a critical planning error, receives a no-go, and that no-go does not account for the fact that he has been awake for over 30 hours. It just means he did not meet the standard, and the standard does not bend. There are students who go through the mountain phase and everything falls into place. They receive go grades on their leadership positions, they navigate the terrain well, they hold themselves together. And there are students who have made it through the Derby phase in excellent standing, and who walk into the mountain phase and fall completely apart. The change in environment, the accumulated sleep debt finally catching up, the physical demands of mountain movement breaking something that the flat ground demands had not yet reached, and they are dropped, or they are recycled, which means they will restart the mountain phase with the next class. Being recycled is its own particular psychological weight. It means staying in the Ranger School pipeline while your classmates move forward. It means starting a phase over, knowing that your body will be in even worse condition when it begins again. Some students are recycled multiple times. Some students accumulate enough time in the course that they spend more than a year in the Ranger School pipeline, recycling and reattempting and fighting for graduation. Those students, the ones who refuse to quit even after multiple recycles, are particularly remarkable. They have chosen, again and again, to go back into something that has already beaten them, specifically because they believe they can beat it back. And then comes the Florida phase. By this point, students who are still in the course have been in it for over 40 days. Their bodies are running on reserves that should not exist. Their minds are operating in ways that are genuinely difficult to describe to someone who has not experienced sustained sleep deprivation and caloric deficit simultaneously over weeks. And the Army sends them to the swamps of Florida. The Florida phase is conducted in and around Eglin Air Force Base and the surrounding environment, which includes everything that makes the Florida Panhandle genuinely inhospitable: dense vegetation, swampy ground, water obstacles that must be crossed with full combat loads, heat and humidity that make physical movement significantly more taxing, and in some portions of the course, actual water-based operations conducted from small boats, requiring students to operate in and around water while maintaining tactical discipline and executing missions. The swamp walks in the Florida phase are legendary among Ranger graduates. Students move through water and mud and vegetation for extended periods, maintaining patrol formations and tactical noise discipline while their bodies scream for rest and food. The water is cold enough to accelerate hypothermia risk when temperatures drop. The mud is thick enough to require genuine physical effort to move through with each step. The vegetation is dense enough that maintaining visual contact with the soldier in front of you requires constant attention. And through all of this, missions must be planned and executed to standard, because the graduation requirement does not care how difficult the environment is. The standard is the standard. There is a component of the Florida phase that many Ranger graduates cite as the single most psychologically brutal part of the entire course, and it is not any individual exercise or patrol. It is the cumulative weight of being so close to the end. When students reach the Florida phase, they can see graduation. They know that if they get through this final phase, they are done. They earn the tab. Everything they have sacrificed over the previous 40-plus days becomes worth it. And that nearness to the end is, paradoxically, one of the hardest things to manage, because the Florida phase still requires the same standard of performance as every other phase. The school does not ease up because graduation is approaching. The school applies the same rigorous evaluation, the same demanding performance standard, the same consequence for failure. Students who have made it all the way to Florida and who fail enough leadership positions to fall below the graduation threshold are dropped this close to the end. Some students are recycled back to repeat the Florida phase after they can see the finish line. That particular experience, being turned around and sent back when graduation was within reach, has produced some of the most raw, honest testimonies about what Ranger School costs that have ever been documented. Let us talk specifically about the sleep deprivation, because it is genuinely one of the most significant components of what makes Ranger School what it is, and because the research on what sustained sleep deprivation does to human performance is both well documented and profoundly disturbing. Military-funded research has looked at the cognitive effects of the level of sleep deprivation experienced during Ranger School, and the results are consistent with what you would expect if you understand what sleep actually does for the brain. After 72 hours of sustained sleep deprivation, which some Ranger students experience during peak operational periods of the course, cognitive performance across nearly every measurable domain degrades to levels comparable to clinical impairment. Decision-making slows. Working memory, the ability to hold multiple pieces of information in mind simultaneously and manipulate them, degrades significantly. Attention narrows. The ability to assess risk accurately declines. Emotional regulation, the capacity to manage frustration and fear, and anger in productive ways, becomes increasingly difficult. And the particularly cruel part is that sleep-deprived people are notoriously poor judges of their own impairment. You feel like you are functioning normally. Your subjective sense of your own performance does not accurately reflect the objective decline that is happening. This is why, in documented studies of Ranger School students, the evaluating instructors can see performance degradation that the students themselves are not fully aware of. The student thinks he is delivering a clear, coherent patrol order. The RI watching him can see that the order has gaps, that the timeline does not make sense, that the student has lost the thread somewhere in the middle and is no longer tracking his own briefing accurately. The student does not know. His impaired brain is telling him he is fine. That gap between subjective experience and objective performance is one of the mechanisms by which Ranger School reveals things about leaders that those leaders did not know about themselves. When the brain is at that level of exhaustion, the things that break first are not the things you expect. Technical skills, things that are deeply procedurally ingrained through thousands of repetitions, tend to hold up relatively well. A soldier who has done land navigation hundreds of times can still navigate on minimal sleep. The basics of weapons handling, communication procedures, patrol formations, these are deeply embedded enough that they survive most levels of exhaustion. What breaks first is the higher-order cognitive function: judgment, adaptive problem-solving, the ability to recognize when the situation has changed and the original plan no longer applies, the ability to manage people who are themselves exhausted and frightened and in pain. These are the things that Ranger School is actually evaluating, and these are precisely the things that fall apart first when the brain is pushed past its limits. There is a phenomenon that is talked about among Ranger graduates with a combination of dark humor and genuine respect, and it is called hallucinations. Sustained sleep deprivation at the levels experienced during peak periods of Ranger School produces hallucinations in a significant percentage of participants, not psychological episodes, not breakdowns, simple, predictable neurological responses to an exhausted brain that is pattern matching against available sensory data and getting it wrong. Ranger students have reported seeing things that are not there, animals in the woods that turn out to be stumps when the patrol gets closer, figures standing at the edge of the tree line that disappear when approached, movements in the vegetation that stop when the student stops and looks directly at them. These are not rare occurrences. They are common enough that instructors and students both know to account for them, to verify observations before reporting them up the chain, to trust the person next to you rather than your own exhausted eyes when the two conflict. And still, the patrol has to keep moving. The mission still has to be executed. The leader still has to be evaluated. The school goes on regardless. Now let us talk about the peer evaluation in more depth, because it is one of the most distinctly human elements of what makes Ranger schools so revealing. Every student in a patrol knows that at certain points they will be evaluating their fellow students, ranking them from best to worst performer. And every student knows they are being evaluated the same way. What this creates is an environment where character is observed continuously, not just during formal leadership positions. How do you behave when you are exhausted and it is not your turn to be the patrol leader? Do you help the soldier next to you who is struggling to carry his load, or do you conserve the energy you need for your next graded evaluation? Do you take the hardest position in the patrol formation, the one that requires the most physical effort or the most tactical exposure, or do you drift toward the easier slots when no one is directly watching? Do you give honest feedback during after-action reviews, even when that feedback might be uncomfortable to deliver, or do you say what people want to hear because it is easier? The peer evaluation catches things that formal grading cannot catch. It catches the student who is technically competent, but who treats the people below him with contempt when the RI is not watching. It catches the student who has strong grades but who disappears when it comes time to do the unglamorous work of patrol-based life, the digging of holes, the carrying of heavy equipment, the taking of the worst sleeping position so that someone else can have a better one. These are the qualities that determine whether a leader is genuinely effective over the long term, and they show up very clearly when people are operating under the kind of sustained stress that Ranger School applies. You can maintain a persona for a day. You cannot maintain a false persona for 61 days without sleep and food. Who you actually are comes out. Ranger School counts on that. There are veterans who have been through multiple combat deployments, who have been in firefights, who have lived through things that most people will never experience, who have gone to Ranger School and failed. This is important to understand, and it is worth sitting with. Combat experience is not equivalent to Ranger School performance, and Ranger School success is not equivalent to combat experience. They are different things measuring different things. A soldier who has been in sustained combat for months has experienced stress and fear and physical hardship that is in many ways incomparable to anything in a controlled training environment. But Ranger School measures something specific, which is the sustained ability to plan and lead complex tactical operations while managing a specific and relentless set of stressors. A combat veteran who has not been through the leadership position repetitions that Ranger School demands, who has not been formally evaluated against the specific grading rubric that RIs use, may fail because the course is measuring something he is not specifically trained for, not because he is less brave or less capable or less deserving of respect. At the same time, Ranger School graduates will tell you that the course taught them things about themselves that they did not know. They know, with a certainty that cannot be manufactured any other way, that they can function as a leader when everything is taken away. They have done it. They have evidence of it from their own experience, not from an imagined scenario or a theoretical self-assessment. When a Ranger School graduate is in a difficult situation and the voice in his head says you cannot do this, something else answers back. I have done worse. I have already been to a place worse than this, and I kept moving. That is not arrogance. That is a specific and hard-earned form of confidence that has real operational value. The Ranger tab itself, the black and gold arc worn on the left shoulder of the Army combat uniform, is one of the most recognized symbols of individual excellence in the United States military. Among soldiers, it carries a weight that is difficult to convey to someone outside the culture. It is not a unit designation. It does not tell you where a soldier served. It tells you what that soldier chose to go through voluntarily, what they survived, and what it cost them. When another soldier sees the Ranger tab on your shoulder, they know something specific about you. They know you chose one of the hardest paths available, that you completed it, and that along the way you were graded on your leadership under conditions designed specifically to break your leadership capacity. That is a signal. That is information that other soldiers take seriously. It is also worth being honest about the cost beyond the physical. Ranger School leaves its students changed in ways that are not always visible or discussed in the official accounts. The sustained caloric deficit produces a complicated relationship with food. Graduates have described periods after Ranger School where their eating behavior was noticeably abnormal, where the deprivation had left a psychological imprint that took time to normalize. The sleep deprivation produces a period of recovery that is longer than the course itself. Bodies that have been operating at a sustained deficit need time to rebuild, and that rebuilding process is not always clean or comfortable. Some graduates report that for weeks after graduation they sleep long hours and still feel unrested, as though the debt accumulated over 61 days cannot be repaid quickly. Physically, injuries that were sustained during the course and managed through willpower, rather than addressed properly, sometimes require attention after graduation. Stress fractures, tendon damage, ligament issues that a student kept moving through because the alternative was being dropped from the course. None of this is meant to be discouraging. It is meant to be honest, because honesty is part of what Ranger School demands of the people who go through it, and part of what any genuine account of it owes to the people who want to understand it. The school is hard. It is designed to be hard. The hardness is the point, and the people who choose to go through it, knowing all of this, are choosing something that reveals a particular kind of commitment and a particular kind of character that deserves to be understood clearly. Let us also talk about what it takes to prepare for Ranger School, because the preparation itself is a significant undertaking that tells you something about the level of the course. Most soldiers who attend Ranger School spend months in deliberate, specific preparation before their report date. They build running volume, not just distance but running under load, because Ranger School is not a road race, and the ability to run fast without a pack is not the same as the ability to move sustainably over distance with 70+ pounds on your back. They practice land navigation until it is genuinely second nature. They learn and relearn patrol-based procedures, battle drills, the technical requirements of the course's tactical missions. They study the grading standards, understanding the specific criteria against which their leadership positions will be evaluated. They work on swimming because the water-based assessments are non-negotiable, and students who are not confident swimmers face a specific kind of fear on top of everything else the course demands. Many soldiers attend pre-Ranger courses, programs run by units specifically to prepare their soldiers for Ranger School. The 82nd Airborne Division, the 75th Ranger Regiment, various special operations units, all have their versions of pre-Ranger preparation. These programs run their soldiers through simulated versions of the course's demands, trying to build the specific fitness base and the specific tactical competency that the school requires. And even after all that preparation, all that specific readiness building over months, students still arrive at Ranger School and fail. They still arrive and discover that there is something the course tests that months of preparation could not fully address. Because preparation can make you more ready. It cannot make you fully ready. Nobody is fully ready for Ranger School until they are standing in the middle of it with no way out but through. There is a particular subset of Ranger School history that is especially powerful, and that is the stories of students who failed, recycled, and came back. Because the school allows, under certain conditions, students to recycle within phases and attempt the course again. The students who recycle are not starting fresh. They are not arriving rested and rebuilt. They are staying in the pipeline, recovering to a limited degree, and then going back into a course that has already beaten them at least once. The psychological dimension of that choice is enormous. You know what is coming. You know exactly what the next phase is going to cost you, because you have already paid that cost once, and it was not enough. And you choose to pay it again. That is a specific kind of resolve that is worth acknowledging directly. It is not rational in any ordinary sense. It is the result of a decision that was made before the course began about what this goal is worth, and a refusal to let exhaustion and failure change the answer. Some of the most decorated Ranger graduates are people who recycled multiple times. People who failed portions of the course, who were held back, who watched other soldiers graduate while they prepared to try again, and who ultimately earned the tab after a timeline that stretched well beyond the minimum 61 days. The soldier who completes Ranger School in the minimum time had a harder road than we can imagine. The soldier who recycled twice and finished anyway has an even more specific piece of evidence about what they are made of, because they had to make the choice to continue not once but multiple times. The instructors at Ranger School, the Ranger instructors themselves, are worth understanding because they are a significant part of what makes the course work. An RI is not a drill sergeant. The job is not to scream and intimidate. The job is to evaluate leadership objectively under controlled conditions and to maintain the integrity of the grading standard, even when a student is clearly suffering and clearly trying their hardest. That last part is harder than it sounds. When you are watching a young soldier who has been awake for 40 hours, give a briefing that has real heart in it, but that falls short of the standard in measurable ways. The human impulse is to give partial credit, to recognize the effort. The RI cannot do that. The standard is the standard, because the standard reflects what is required in actual combat, where effort without result does not change outcomes. An RI who grades too easily is not doing the student a favor. He is sending someone into a leadership role with a false certification, and Ranger School has always understood that the cost of maintaining the standard inside the course is far lower than the cost of sending people out of the course without having actually earned what the tab represents. The 75th Ranger Regiment, the Army's premier light infantry and direct action raid force, is the organization most historically associated with Ranger School, though the school serves the entire Army and is attended by students from across the military branches and, in some cases, from allied nations. The regiment has its own specific demands and culture around Ranger School. New officers assigned to the regiment are expected to have, or to earn, their Ranger tab within a specific time frame. Enlisted soldiers at certain levels are expected to hold the tab. The regiment's expectation reflects its understanding that the skills and leadership qualities Ranger School develops are directly relevant to the regiment's operational mission, which involves rapid deployment, precise small unit tactics, and execution under extreme pressure. The regiment has deployed continuously since September 2001. The soldiers who carry out its missions are people who have been forged in exactly the kind of pressure that Ranger School simulates. Let us also talk about what happens at graduation, because the contrast is striking. 61+ days of the worst sustained physical and psychological stress available in an Army training environment, and then there is a ceremony. There is an airfield at Fort Benning where Ranger graduation ceremonies are held. Students who have been through all three phases, who have enough Go grades to meet the graduation requirement, who have passed their peer evaluations, who have not been dropped or recycled out of the course, stand in formation. They are visibly diminished. Anyone looking at a Ranger School graduating class can see what the course has cost them. Faces are gaunt. Bodies are thin in ways that will take weeks of proper nutrition to reverse. The soldiers are exhausted in a way that is visible in how they stand and move. And then the Ranger tab is pinned to their left shoulder. Some graduates describe that moment as the most emotional of their military careers. Men who have been in combat, who have experienced the full range of what military service can produce emotionally, stand on that airfield and find themselves overwhelmed by something that a tab of black and gold cloth represents. Not the cloth, what went into it, what it cost, what it means about who they are, and what they proved they could do. Family members who attend graduation have their own experience of it. Spouses and parents who saw their soldier leave for the course fit and confident, and who now see them return diminished and hollow-eyed, and yet wearing something on their shoulder that was not there before. The combination of relief that the person they love is through it and pride in what that person just did, and a particular kind of sadness about what it cost them, is something that people who have witnessed Ranger graduation describe with a consistent emotional weight. It is not a clean celebration. It is something more complicated than that, more real than that. There is a version of this story that could be told as pure celebration, as a straightforward account of American military excellence that asks for nothing from the audience but admiration. And while the admiration is absolutely warranted, there is something more honest and more useful available here. The honest version is that Ranger School exists because leadership under stress matters more than leadership under comfortable conditions, and because the only way to know if someone can lead under stress is to put them under actual stress and see. The honest version is that the people who fail Ranger School are not failures as human beings, or even necessarily as soldiers. They are people who went to a specific course with a specific standard and did not meet it, and that information has value in exactly the way that all accurate information has value. The honest version is that the people who graduate are not finished products. They are people who have one specific and hard-earned piece of evidence about what they can do, which they will spend the rest of their careers building on. And the honest version acknowledges that Ranger School has evolved over time, that conversations about how the course is structured, what it is optimizing for, whether the specific combination of stressors it uses produces the leadership development outcomes it is designed for, are ongoing and serious conversations happening among people who have been through it and who care deeply about what it produces. The Army does not treat Ranger School as a sacred artifact that cannot be examined. It treats it as a program with a mission, and it evaluates whether that program is achieving its mission effectively. That institutional honesty is part of what has allowed the course to remain relevant over more than 70 years of changes in the nature of warfare, in the demographics of the military, and in the understanding of human performance under stress. There is one more thing that needs to be said, and it is about the choice. Everything about Ranger School, the preparation, the attendance, the suffering, the recycling if it comes to that, the decision to continue rather than to quit. All of it is voluntary. Every person at Ranger School chose to be there. They applied, they prepared, they showed up, and when the moment came to accept the conditions or walk away, they chose to stay. That voluntary nature of the experience is important to the meaning of what the tab represents. It is not just proof of what was endured. It is proof of what was chosen. Every single day of the course, the option to quit existed. The Army does not force anyone to continue against their will. They call it voluntary withdrawal, and any student can request it at any time. The students who finish are the ones who did not request it, who, when the option was available, chose not to take it. On the days when they were hallucinating from sleep deprivation, on the days when the cold had gone into their bones and their feet were in ruins, on the days when they received a no-go and knew they would have to find another chance somewhere in an already depleted timeline. They chose again and again to stay. That is what the tab says, in language that other soldiers understand fluently. You chose this. You kept choosing it. Even when it was the wrong choice for your body and possibly for your sanity, you kept choosing it. And here you are. The men and women who wear that Ranger tab, who have stood in the Georgia rain at 3 in the morning with nothing left, and taken the next step anyway, who have led their patrol through a swamp while their brain told them to lie down, who have earned